This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Alex Kudelka, co-founder and CRO at Glassfy. Alex, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This is cool. Thank you for coming. Okay, let me set the stage first. Morning, you wake up, you go to the gym, hopefully, take a shower, and sit at your desk to continue to push the envelope of your app business. You may be at the very beginning of your app project journey or not. Regardless, the notion of monetization is on your mind. Am I using the right tools? Am I missing something? Do I see the accurate picture of what's going on? These are the questions that pop up in your mind all the time. In this episode, Alex is here to share monetization tool stack best practices. But first, Alex, let's talk about you and your background. Tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in apps roughly ever since the App Store was created. Back in university in 2010, I created my first mobile app on iOS, and it was a social network that failed miserably. But I learned a lot. There were no subscriptions back then. There were no in-app purchases back then, actually.
Yeah.
There was just pay for the app. There was that famous, I think it was $1,000 app, just so people would pay $1,000 to have it.
Exactly. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So those were the Wild West days of the apps. And ironically, my co-founder Marco at Glassfy was building a similar app at the same time I was. He was building around me, which turned out to be a viral app of the time, far exceeding Yelp and other tools to find restaurants and activities to do around you. And so yeah, ever since I started in apps in 2010, that's what I stayed in. And most recently, I've been scaling sales organizations at SaaS companies like Algolia and Bitrise. And we started Glassfy just a couple of years ago. And now we have a team spread across Europe between Italy and the UK and Germany, selling to app builders all over the world who are trying to just make sense of how to make more money from apps.
Oh, this is great. 2010. Let's see. iPhone 3GS.
Yeah.
2 years before Instagram became actually took off.
Yep.
So things like TikTok, not even in the infancy. Probably somebody was trying to conceive this idea back then, but it didn't left his head because it was too early. Facebook was rising, but again, he hasn't got the Instagram back then, so he hasn't got that huge booster. And yeah, the App Store, it's been 2 years, so yeah, it wasn't like precisely 500 apps as it was the first couple of months, but still,
yeah,
wild west. So a lot of stuff in app marketing was very should I say investigative. Nothing was proven yet. A lot of mistakes, a lot of things was in the people's mind to try and see if it works, if it sticks. Okay, today at Glassfy, what you guys do in the market? Tell me about your company, please.
Yeah, so what we did is we built something that we call app revenue management in that space. And at its most core basic form, we are an SDK that handles the subscription infrastructure and in-app purchase infrastructure within the stores across iOS, Android, and web. So we just make it easy for you to basically monetize your app, give you the tools to monetize your app, as well as we have different point solutions that are connected to that for you to actually grow the monetization of your app. So we have analytics, experimentation tools, paywalls, subscription and coupon codes, so that developers not only can offload the heavy lifting of monetizing the app, but we sat there and we said to ourselves, what the biggest problem developers have and app organizations have is they don't know what to do next. It's quite easy to build an app nowadays, and it's quite easy to even integrate payments. But the moment you actually have to start growing your app, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, a lot of different strategies. And we wanted to give the tools that connect to the back end, that whole platform experience for an app organization team, so they don't have to go out and buy different tools or build them themselves.
So you're saying that people may not realize that it's not going to be a sprint, but a marathon. And if they're not prepared to run that marathon, they're doomed at the business. So they need help from people who know for sure what it takes to run the business on not weeks, not months, but years to make it sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's, you can get those first few hundred users or thousand users, but you need a sustainable model, right? A foundation.
Exactly. All right, let's define the major term we're going to be using today, which is monetization tool stack. It's, probably every business has its set of acronyms, but in the app business, there's so many of them. It's like the inside of baseball, the phrase that US folks like to use when you have no idea what people are just talking about because it's so full of jargon that has no relevancy from folks outside. So let's define what is monetization tool stack.
Yeah. So it is specifically the tools that directly influence monetization. So we're not talking anything like a finance tool. We're talking about the tools that actually influence the purchase behavior of a user. And we actually spread that terminology across 4 categories. And those different 4 categories are acquire and attribute. So that's one. And monetize those users. So the actual app revenue management. The third is understanding the customer. And the fourth is engaging and retaining the users. So those are the 4 categories of tools that we would say belong to the tech stack.
Got you. Now, let's imagine I'm an app brand and I'm thinking about building my monetization tool stack. So obviously, what are my options? I can Google it, I can ask ChatGPT, or I can ask an expert, which in this case would be you, Alex. So where do I start?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're very early, right? Let's put it into perspective. If you are in that first stage of looking to monetize, the very first decision you need to make is I need a tool that's going to help actually build app revenue. So that app revenue management tool, you have two decisions essentially. You can build or you can buy, which is kind of a central theme across any discussion of tool stacks. You can purchase a tool like a Glassfy or a Revenue Cat or an Adapty, where they're going to give you the engine, right, the back end to make it easy for you to implement payments within your app. And then you just think about, okay, is this something I want to build or buy? Right. And if you're a solo developer, an indie developer, or if you're just a new app organization within a larger company, it doesn't really matter. A central question you should be asking yourself is this a core competency of our team? Right? Is somebody in our team an app revenue expert? Right? Is somebody in our team a payments expert in iOS and Android? If not, chances are that's a decision that you should offload that to another tool. So that's square one. That's moment one where it's we know we want to monetize. Let's get a tool that's going to make it very easy for us. That's going to be foundational. That's also going to help us add tools on top of it, right? That's going to harmoniously let us build our tool stack on top of it.
So yeah, this is should be the mindset. Now, let's talk about the tools. So the toolbox for monetization.
Mhm.
So let's give people the specific ones and tell them the rationale behind why these specific ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's continue on the thread of being a young, newly monetized app. Let's say you're somewhere around the $10,000 a month mark, which is a large majority of the apps, right? Unfortunately, today there's still kind of that concept of 1% of the apps make 99% of the
Yeah.
revenue. But let's say you're slugging away and you're building a truly great product, and you've started to monetize. So most probably you have either built it yourself, you've either done payments yourself, built a backend and hosted a server to do receipt validation and all of those things related to payments. Chances are still, if you're at 10K or you're in that realm of maybe 100 to $500,000 a year in app revenue, you most probably have very little visibility into how well your revenue is actually performing. You're probably getting a report from Apple and Android once a week. That data is very little to you, right? Means very little. You probably don't understand your lifetime value of a user. You probably don't understand ARPU. You probably don't understand your net retention rate. All of the fundamental things that a subscription app or a monetized app should really start to learn at that stage, right? Because your biggest worry is over. Your biggest worry was, I want to see if I can make some money. That's great. You've checked that box. It's time to start making sense. So square one is probably time to have an app revenue management tool like a Glassfy or a Revenue Cat or an Adapty. Second realm to be involved in is your acquisition and attribution piece. So obviously revenue only matters if you can acquire new users, right? If you can bring users into the business, right? And that's where having the right ad platform, not only agency, but ad attribution platform that's going to help you really understand what's working and not working. So that could be an apps flyer, for example, where you're really understanding what's working and not working and attributing success correctly. A second area to be in is understanding your users. So that's your CRM space, right? Your foundation of having all of your data. That could be something as simple as a HubSpot. That could be a Braze, right? If you want to go the route of Braze, where you're going to have a lot of different other tools that you can harness, like in-app messaging and things like that, which we'll talk about in a second. But you're going to need a CRM. You're going to need a place where you're gathering more and more information. You would be surprised. I'm constantly surprised at how many apps who are making 100, 200, 500,000 hours in revenue don't even have the email address of their subscriber. They're just not collecting it. They're not collecting information.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And that fourth spot is that engage and retain. So that is your in-app messaging, right? Your clever taps, or again, your Braves, where you're engaging and trying to retain those users that you already have.
Yeah, this is a good trajectory for your monetization strategy, and what tools will be instrumental, figuratively, probably literally, for your business to grow. Now, people do mistakes, as far as I remember. At least I do. ChatGPT does mistakes. Oh boy, how many of those? We all do mistakes. So, when you look at your previous experiences, what mistakes with building monetization tool stack come to your mind?
I still have to go back to the one that we mentioned earlier, and I'll try to maybe prioritize them. But I think number one is always that early mistake of build versus buy. There's If you don't have some core principles written down about how you make tooling decisions internally, it's really, really going to harm your business in the future. And that could be because you're building too much and you're taking on too much tech debt, so that at some point, 2, 3, 5 years down the line, your team is actually spending more time maintaining the stuff that you've built than shipping new functionality. And that's a prime time for a competitor to come and beat you out. Second thing is, if it's not your core competency, chances are you're not going to build something as good as a tool that specifically is meant for that problem.
Exactly.
So I think that build versus buy is just, it's so far above and beyond any other mistake that you can do with a tool stack, that it's really worth considering. I think the only other thing that is worth mentioning there is if you overbuy tools, right? In this day and age of SaaS, it's so easy to buy tools. I mean, I've worked in companies where we've had 300 plus SaaS tools,
Mhm.
and and I guarantee you we're using a third of them, right? So I think because it's so easy to procure and use, I think you just kind of have to have a sanity check on how much am I buying and spending on all these tools.
I think it comes down to tactical versus strategical decisions. Unfortunately, in general, human beings are not that great in strategy, thinking ahead, a few years ahead of the present moment, and it really bites you later when probably it's too late because the time is gone, and the decisions you're just describing that have to be done at the very beginning to be profitable and efficient down the line. You cannot go
Mhm.
back in time and just fix this stuff. These decisions, these strategic ones, should be done right at the very beginning.
Yep.
Alex, looking back at your years of doing biz dev for multiple startups, what would you like to change about this business the most?
Mm. About the app business, or
Um, yeah, probably something that was like a kind of a roadblock for you for every startup, like
Hmm.
some common thing that like was not in your power to move away, but that was a really, showstopper, so to speak.
I would say I hope, number one, I hope the duopoly breaks up sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
And I think we see that happening, day by day, country by country, because I believe there has been amazing benefits, but also deep negatives for builders, in that space. So I think finally freeing up the stores and freeing up builders to sell and create wherever, however they want, is going to be refreshing. And I think the other thing is, I hope more and more people realize that they can build something. Um, it's often that first hurdle, which is, do I
Mhm.
think I can actually do this? Do I think I can actually build something that
Right.
somebody else is going to buy? And you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. We were at that point. At some point we were saying to ourselves, is anybody going to give a shit about what I'm about to do?
Right.
And that's that first hurdle that everybody just freezes at. And I think because of tooling, and because of the space becoming more friendly, I think more and more, hopefully, builders come out and create.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. It's probably the common thread for every entrepreneur. Like, it doesn't matter, it should not be necessarily some high-tech stuff in every business. Will somebody care about the service or product I'm going to be building for the, foreseeable future? Am I just, deceiving myself? Am I too selfish? Or there's something, there's a potential for me to make money and actually solve problems for other people's. Believing in yourself, it's hard.
Yeah, it
Okay,
is incredibly hard, and imposter syndrome as well.
exactly. All right. We're switching to the second part of the show where It doesn't matter what topic is on the table. I take a chance to ask a few quick questions to every guest who come on the show, so people who are listening us, our listeners, can know my guests better. Here we go. So, what smartphone do you have now? Are you on Android, iOS side? Are you switching back and forth or staying one side all the time?
iOS all the time, forever. iPhone since the third model.
Got you. Um, let's jump back before that moment. What was your first mobile phone? The one that you could just put in your pocket?
Um, it was, oh gosh, which model number was it? The one that everyone had in the US was a Nokia.
Yeah,
Um,
obviously back then.
of course, and it was the brick that just had Snake, right? You could just play Snake on it. But that was my first phone. I'm trying to remember the model number of it.
Ye- I guess like regardless of the number, I think it should be
Yeah,
remembered in history as the Snake Nokia phone.
exactly. The Snake Nokia. That I think it was the 3310 was
Yeah,
the
probably that was the case. All right,
yeah.
back to present. So you're living home, I don't know, going for groceries, whatever, and you forgot your phone at home. When you're out, what would be the most missing feature for you?
When I'm out, like out and about, what's the most important feature, or what do you mean?
Just like you're out like for whatever business you're going to work, to gym, anything,
Hmm.
and whatever you're doing, your phone is still at your home. What is the
Yeah.
most missing feature for you?
I would say the camera, right? I mean, it's like it's almost a default for me.
Got you. Okay. When you're looking at your iPhone right now, do you have any like occasional thoughts? Wouldn't be great if this phone can do here this or that. Hardware, software, not necessarily something trendy, but just to make it more useful tool for you.
Mm. I'm gonna take this question in the complete opposite direction. Um, I want to never touch this phone. Um, I I had a very sobering moment a few months ago when I got that dreaded Sunday report of my usage on my phone. My average daily usage was skyrocketing, well above 5 hours, which
Boy.
is, the industry standard.
Uh-huh.
And I just made a mission to proactively stop using my phone. And so I think whatever efficiency Apple and app builders can create around either making information more digestible and bite-sized where you're not sitting there just endlessly zoning in, the better. So whatever gets me to never touch that phone again will make me the happiest man alive.
I hear you. I think that's the problem with the mobile technology on its own. Become because it becomes so more sophisticated every year, it becomes so ubiquitous in our lives, and this
Hmm.
scale was tipped so heavily towards usage,
Hmm.
and the psychology of using your phone plays more and more bigger role these days. And
Yes.
it's almost like if you should factor in psychology, the development of the both hardware and software as heavily as any other discipline that you need to create an app or new smartphone, because we're like, what is it, 6.4 billion smartphones in the world, if I remember the number correctly. And it's just I don't know, like if you can name the same scale of anything that's being used so heavily, it's just mind-boggling. Yeah, so I definitely
Exactly.
hear you. Yeah, the moderation, that's the key.
Yep.
All right. Before I let you go, very, very final question. How can people get touching with you and know more information about what you do?
Connect with me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Alex Kudelka, Glassfy. Email is alex@glassfy.io. I'm always around to help app builders and would love to connect with anyone.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. Thank you, Alex. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Alex Kudelka, co-founder and CRO at Glassfy. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe and you will be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.